enrolled for higher education in South Africa, the throughput rate, that is the graduation rate, is very low at 15%. So the efficiency of the spending that we are already doing on making on the students is unrealized pretty much.
Okay, so I think we're seeing the same visuals that viewers are seeing still. Police outside Parliament and also inside the parliamentary precinct where students stormed in a little earlier. I'm speaking to economics editor Thandeka Obule.
Francis, the minister did tell the honourable members in the House, where he actually continues with the speech, that we have been reminded in this past week of the challenges of financing the expansion of further education and university opportunities. And he says it needs to be said that a disruption of learning is not constructive.
And that's what Adam Habib has said as well. If people don't write their exams, we know that that in itself could exacerbate our problems, unemployment, a lack of skills, the things that are holding us back and exacerbating inequality in this country. So it's very difficult either way. If you look at higher education, just explain that again. You said there's a concern around the spending. So a lot of students aren't getting through university in the first place.
Yes, you can imagine that many students coming from very poor socio-economic backgrounds.
I'm going to stop you for 2 seconds. Let's cross to Abra, who I understand is outside Parliament. Tell us what you're seeing.
I'm standing in front of the main gates of Parliament, and behind me we have thousands and thousands of students who are trying to get their voices heard. Earlier on they were inside the precinct, but after a range of stun grenades and banging went off, they were all forced out. Now, while I was here, I witnessed running battles between police in riot gear and the students, and these kids are not backing down. They were moving full force to the front. They showed no fear. I saw students on the ground crying. Some of them were hit by various missiles. As I'm standing here right now, there are missiles being launched over the gates. These students are telling the cops they are not going anywhere. On the other side of Parliament, at the other gates, we have the same situation over there. The students are actually on the premises on that side. They're sitting in, they're forming little protests, and you constantly see students trying to break through the police barriers, trying to get in. In the meantime, the National Assembly is still sitting. MPs are going to be expected to come out from the steps, onto the steps of the National Assembly soon. So who knows what's going to happen then, because these students are demanding that they see Higher Education Minister Blade Nzimande today. Back to you in the studio.
All right, let's try and get Francis if we can. Now, Francis, I know you can't really see what's going on from where you're sitting, but I mean, word on social media everywhere. The students are saying they will not budge until they see the Minister, of course, of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Nzimande. Is there being any word on the outcomes of that? Is there anything being done in relation to that?
With Johannesburg.
People laugh.
When just
until they see the Higher Education Minister, any word on that in terms of somebody saying something to him inside Parliament?
Last I saw, the Finance Minister, Nhlanhla Nene, was continuing with his speech. So it seemed quite quiet and calm. He carried on. That's when we started hearing the sounds of rubber bullets outside Parliament. I then went outside and saw the students who had stormed the gates and entered the parliamentary precinct. At that time, it seemed quite calm. They were singing, they were dancing, but we know that more recently there have been clashes in that precinct. We've been bringing you those live visuals, and I did see some of the students. One certainly was bleeding. We saw the stun grenades, and that was all happening inside the parliamentary precinct. So as far as I know, the finance minister is still inside, but those MPs, including the finance minister, including Minister Bladen Zamande, if he's there, will need to exit. And that is the tricky situation. We're here a few meters down the road from that main door, and we're in the parliamentary precinct. And I can tell you none of our guests, the people that we are trying to speak to, are able to get to us. So I think this is a big security issue when those MPs and when the finance minister and the other ministers themselves exit that building.
Look, Francis, I mean, this was supposed to be a peaceful protest with, of course, the students saying that they want to air their views during this time of the budget in order for the minister to actually understand their seriousness about the situation. But now, what exactly happened? How did it unfold that it just got from inside the house to outside?
You know, I can tell you that it started for me. I heard a colleague say that they had seen a tire being burnt outside. There were rumors that students were going to be bussed in from UCT. We know that they started coming in from various different tertiary institutions in the area. Those numbers swelled. I went outside and I saw about 600. But after that, those numbers swelled and swelled and swelled. Initially, like you say, it seemed very, very peaceful. There were some police in riot gear, but not many, and the police seemed to be handling the situation very well. They were very calm. There was a cordon. The students were peaceful beyond that cordon. Now, what we know is that there was a lot of focus on that main protest, which was on Parliament Street, the main street. They weren't blocking the entrance. The MPs were still able to come into the precinct. However, there's a smaller street at the bottom of Parliament. There was less attention being paid there, and that's where some of the students went and stormed the gates. We heard banging. Some of the noises we heard, apparently rubber bullets. So that was when the clashes started outside. Those students came inside the precinct. Again, it seemed quite calm. They were singing, but we know that recently there's been clashes inside the precinct as well. There you can see, and Nhlanhla Nene still continues to give his speech inside the assembly. He was delayed. Politicians themselves were talking about this issue, saying that the mini-budget should not be tabled today because this is such an important issue. However, as we heard from economics editor Thandeka Ngobule, the politicians that were kicked out from the EFF, also, the DA's Musi Maimane tried to engage with the students outside in the precinct, and they were actually told that they would, that the politicians must leave, that the students would like to handle this matter themselves.
Look, Francis, inside the house, are they even remotely aware of the current situation outside?
They must be, because, like I say, we're down the road in the precinct, so just a few meters from where they are, and you could hear the banging. You could definitely hear the banging. It seems that those were stun grenades. So I am convinced that in that house, they would know that there is something going on, whether they know all the details, but certainly social media is buzzing with this, so I'm sure. And this is a decision. The finance minister, he was heckled when he started. The EFF was saying, bring down those fees, bring down those fees, and he continued to talk. So I think he's decided, he's taken a decision to continue and to not let these student protests or the political machinations around the student protests to stop him tabling this mini-budget today.
All right, but as where you said, Francis, do you think that the things are slowly getting under control in terms of the riot police versus the students outside?
It looks like it is. I'm seeing the same visuals that you can see. We're not hearing any more of those bangs, and I think that some of the students have been evacuated. You can see it's a much calmer scene right now. So the tension seems to have dissipated, but you know, before we know that these students stormed from a place where they weren't expected to storm from. I gather there's a larger police presence outside the building now, and you can see it definitely does look a little bit calmer inside the parliamentary precinct right now. If you can hear me, I can see Bulelani. Bulelani, if you can hear us, maybe you can give us an update from outside Parliament.
Or you're going to have a guest immediately.
All right, we're definitely trying to give you events as they unfold right outside Parliament and inside. Of course, Minister Nhlanhla Nene is still tabling his midterm budget speech amid all that chaos that has happened outside, where we've just seen serious injuries live on television as the students protest against the fee hike that is proposed for next year. All right, Bulelani Philip, our reporter, you've seen him outside there. Let's hope he can talk to us now. Bulelani, a very good afternoon to you. What can you tell us at this stage?
We're going to do it that this way. Yeah, can you hear me?
Bulelani, we can hear you. Good afternoon. Can you hear us?
Hey?
All right, that's Bulelani. Bulelani, can you hear us? It's Alicia from the studio. Can you hear us from there? All right, we seem to be struggling trying to get through one of our reporters there who's on the scene. That's Bulelani Philip. We've got Abra Babia. We've also got Francis Hurd, who was supposed to be discussing the outcomes of the budget speech. Let's go back to Parliament now, where Musi Maimane has taken the podium.
Come a bit closer.
Honourable members, thank you very much. I've noted your request, Honourable Maimane, but I'm sure it would be made appropriately to the relevant people you are advising that they undertake a particular action. Honourable members, I would like to thank you for your consideration given the incident that happened earlier in the House, and I would most likely to thank the members of the public who are in the gallery, and in particular some of our young guests, the students who were here for all the time, for their discipline and patience. This concludes the debate and the end of the House. The House is adjourned.
All right, that was, of course, visuals coming in from Parliament, and we just saw the wrap, of course, of the minister's midterm budget. We didn't get to see much of what was happening because of the happenings that were taking place right outside in Parliament, in Parliament's precinct, where the students were, of course, clashing with the students. Let's try our journalist on the scene once again, Bulelani Philip. Bulelani, can you hear me? It's Alicia in studio. Can you give us the latest? What's happening outside Parliament now?
Good afternoon, Alicia. Basically, I mean, it's been quite a hectic, precinct of Parliament as students, thousands of them, burst into the gates of Parliament, demanding that they be heard by the Higher Education and Training Minister, Blades Mande. Of course, police did step in to try and calm down the situation, but also try to get the students out of the precinct of Parliament because they had entered quite illegally. So at the moment, the situation is quite calm, but there are sporadic incidents where police are firing stun grenades to come try and get the students out of the precinct of Parliament.
Look, Bulelani, we've been wondering what's going on inside the House. Now, we've just seen that the House has been adjourned on that order. Do you know if Minister Blades Mande will indeed actually come and address the students?
Alicia, at this stage, it's quite unclear whether, government through the Higher Education Minister will be able to address the students. But of course, from briefings that we heard yesterday, he had said that, they want to give this chance, of trying to sell this, cap of 6% fee increment to students before they can really make any other comments, to students. But at the moment, I can safely say that, it's quite unclear whether it'll address students. But of course, we are going to be trying to get to speak to all the role players with regards to the budget, as well as getting the implications of this budget towards, funding higher education. Of course, we'll be trying to get all political parties as they come out of parliament in any moment from now.
Look, Bulelani, what happened? How did this protest get so out of hand?
Well, I suppose that there was no real anticipation by the police here in Parliament, but of course the students did start gathering outside the gates of Parliament shortly before the budget was supposed to be delivered. But of course the momentum just got out of hand, and the students, and their excitement as well as their vigilance, they actually burst, through the minimally manned gates of Parliament, and they were coming in their hundreds. In fact, I'm sure it must have been over 1,000 students that were in the precinct of Parliament. So at the moment, the situation is quite calm, but there were still a couple of students that are milling around the precinct of Parliament.
Look, Bulelani, we saw live visuals of students getting injured live on TV. Can you tell us about the nature of the injuries that you maybe have observed through some of the students that you've encountered?
Alicia, it's quite difficult at this stage to try and, say expectly in terms of the number of injuries, because the situation has really been chaotic and hectic, and of course police have been trying to contain the situation and trying to condone off some members of the media from actually becoming part of these altercations. But of course I'm sure as the day goes on we will try and get further details with regards to injuries of students.
Look, another pressing issue, Bulelani, was of course we also saw the EFF MPs being forcibly removed there, and there was a rumor of even rubber bullets inside the house. Can you confirm this?
Can you come again, Alicia?
Bulelani, we also heard, we also saw the EFF members, MPs, being forcibly removed from Parliament. Now there's a rumor there was actually gunshots or rubber bullets that went off inside the house. Can you confirm this for us?
Alicia, it would be difficult at this stage to give you a factual, understanding of what happened inside, because, as you say, it's rumors, and I actually haven't heard anything to that effect. But of course, as the day goes on, I'm sure we'll be able to confirm whether those allegations are true or not.
Here's another allegation, Bulelani. We've also been getting reports that we're trying to establish the link between the EFF and the buses that were busing in students. Have you heard anything in relation to that?
Well, from what we saw in the House, it looks like it was an orchestrated, a campaign or protest by the EFF MPs, because when they were starting to demand that, the issue of these higher education fee increments be discussed, we saw them standing up and actually started chanting, fees must fall, as well as holding up placards. So one can safely suspect that, this was an orchestrated campaign. But of course, the relationship between that protest and what's happening outside, we cannot really safely, say factually that there is a connection. But of course, we'll try and get a factual understanding from the EFF MPs whether, these students that are here were here on their invitation or not.
All right, that's our reporter right outside the parliamentary gates there, Mr. Bulelani Philip, and we will, of course, continue to give you all the latest updates and developments regarding the students' protest that has, of course, disrupted Minister Nhlanhla Nene's midterm budget speech. This is SABC News.
This is the
boy who is making me to cry. You are mad.
re tlo tla thusa wena o North West o Limpopo o KwaZulu-Natal Mpumalanga ke speak out se re tlo monyola.
You may never know what intentions the next person has. Sometimes people are not.
Back live to Parliament, where Francis Hurd is standing by.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Incredible scenes from Parliament today, and we've just confirmed that there is a lockdown, as that means that everybody in the Assembly right now, including the Finance Minister, who's been tabling his mini-budget, will not be allowed to leave because of security issues. So right now, there is a lockdown. It looked like things were getting calmer in just meters away from the door, where we have seen clashes in the precinct between police and students today. Let's cross to Bulelani, who's outside. We're in that parliamentary precinct. Bulelani, what can you see?
Right, welcome back to Parliament. We are outside the National Assembly just after the midterm budget policy statement by Finance Minister, Mr. Nene. Basically, we'll be doing some political reactions. First up is going to be the FF Plus, Dr. Peter Mulder. Basically, your assessment of the Minister's policy statement?
Well, the Minister admitted in the beginning that the economic growth rate, he predicted 2%, is down to 1.5. But it seems that he succeeded to balance it in the end of the day. And I think most probably because in the beginning of the year, there's a 1% tax hike for personal tax, and I think that buffeted it. The big problem, the question is, will he be able to do it next year and the year afterwards if the economic growth rate is down all the way? My problem a bit is it seems to be business as usual, and we're in a big crisis. We need something more specific to stimulate the economy. I'm thankful that he said they will try and regulate the state-owned companies, specifically with corruption concerned. We can't carry them all the time. And if that is some positive, I'll surely support him in that, but we can't carry these state-owned enterprises anymore, yeah.
Lastly, you talked about being advised on the wealth tax. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's giving a signal that in February he's going to raise the wealth tax. I'm a bit worried about that because we already got a system where people as rich pay more. And if you really milk the cow on the top, we've got only 5 million taxpayers of 50 million. You can kill the cow and then we're dead. So let's hope. I personally would prefer that as a 2% over the board, not only going for certain people.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Peter Mulder from the FF Plus, giving his party's view on the budget policy statement. Coming up next is going to be the Chief Whip of the NFP, Professor Nhlanhla Kubeka. Prof Kubisa, sorry. Prof, basically the NFP, your thoughts on the minister's speech?
Well, we expected the minister to say something about the upheavals in education, higher education in particular, in the light of the violent protests. But he said nothing, utterly nothing, in terms of funding for student fees, because to me that is paramount. This issue has been going on and it's been attended to. It must, but you know, countries all over the world invest in education. Now the economy is slowing down and we're not investing in education. In other words, we will not be having a future. We have got to invest in it. Secondly, he said nothing about plowing money into entrepreneurship, because they've got to put money there. Our economy is slowing down. There's a shrink in the economy, and he said nothing about poverty alleviation and unemployment. So those are the issues to us are important. There is drought in the country. I think more money must be put into the issue of drought. Water is needed. I mean, the energy supply also has caused a dent. I mean, there's not so much reference, except what we know about Eskom, assets for Eskom, paying the debt, etc., etc. But we needed more on those issues. These are the issues that are worrying the NFP.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Nhlanhla Kubisa, giving us his party's view on the budget policy statement, talking a lot about higher education, feeling that it was ignored by the Finance Minister. And now from the ACDP, Mr. Steve Swart, your thoughts on the budget policy statement?
Well, it's in a very difficult environment, as you see what's going on here at Parliament at the moment. And obviously from a Christian perspective, we need to implore our viewers to be praying for the situation of what's going on. There's a high level of dissatisfaction. And yes, the minister had very little fiscal room to move, but the situation here at Parliament has got to be addressed, where you have got students here that are complaining, that are demonstrating, yes, law and order must be prevail, and it cannot be condoned any illegal action. But surely the minister should have addressed this issue that is taking place in Parliament right now. He has got very little fiscal room to move. We see economic growth slowing down, but at the very least, we need to see some way of some meeting to engage with the students that are very upset at the moment, so that we can have a look at dealing with these issues, so that we don't have situations where the whole world is watching South Africa at the moment. We've got a fiscal consolidation path. It is sound and it is good. But this scene that we see today in Parliament obviously detracts from all the good that we are trying to do in the South Africans. So I implore South Africans to be praying, to be taking action, so that we can be addressing these critical issues facing our nation. We cannot allow the EFF as well to disrupt Parliament, as they continually do, and we see it today. We all share the sentiments. I have sons that are students. I have sons that are students at Stellenbosch and various universities. I appreciate the difficulties with the fees, the high fees. That situation needs to be addressed, but we need to bring calm and stability to our nation as we address this very important fiscal process.
Mr. Steve Swart, thank you very much for your time sharing his thoughts on a budget policy statement that is the ACTP. And now we talk to the official opposition, the DA. The spokesperson on finance is Mr. David Mania. Your thoughts on the budget?
Well, what we hoped would happen, that the minister would deliver an ambitious medium-term budget policy statement that would give hope to the 8.4 million people who are unemployed and to the thousands of students who are standing outside Parliament. But what we got was a business-as-usual medium-term budget statement, which didn't get to the heart of the critical roadblocks holding back jobs and growth in South Africa. And frankly, it's not good enough for the minister to simply say that government are seized with the matter of student funding. What it points to is a complete failure to prioritize funding. Students can legitimately ask, why is there no money to assist poor students who are struggling at tertiary institutions when there is 1.6 billion rand to fund President Jacob Zuma's 74-person cabinet comprising of 72 ministers and deputy ministers? Equally, students will ask, why is there no money to fund poor students at tertiary institutions when in this budget we are going to be allocating 2.5 billion rand to the BRICS Bank? And again, students will be asking, why is there no money for poor students at tertiary institutions when there is, for example, 702 million additional rand allocated to 118 foreign missions, which the Treasury itself says are inefficient and not aligned with the country's strategic goals. This is a failure to prioritize funding. At the end of the day, what the students should be saying is Bladen Zamande must fall.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. David Mania from the official opposition, the DA, giving us his party's view on the budget policy statement. Now, moving along with the political reactions, we've got Umama Usbongile from the IFP. The IFP, your party's position on the budget policy statement?
We are actually quite shocked by what has happened. Actually, the minister had very little to say because there isn't much that he's going to do. We are still going to be seeing quite a lot of very, very poor economic growth in our country. We are seeing quite a sluggish economic growth in our country. We are seeing unemployment still rising. We are seeing quite a lot of anti-social issues still rising in our country. Now, the minister, having made his statements and actually having attached some monies to a few areas, the surprising part is that he did not attach any monetary value to the students, and we were actually quite shocked when he did not do that. That is why the students today are here, because of the NSFAS funds, which are not seen to be visible, where the students were even asking for Minister Bladen Zamande to come and address them, all such type of things. Remember, we had roads must fall last time, now we have these fees as well. It is quite a crisis which needs to be addressed, and money has got to be allocated to it. We are also seeing quite a lot of debt actually being acquired by our country, and we're seeing a lot of imports coming in and exports not going out as much as possible. We will still be experiencing quite a lot of problems as far as our country is concerned, and that is a problem to us as the IFP. The energy issue is also a major crisis, where Eskom has still got to deliver, where other energy sources have got to be considered, so that we try and ensure that through the energy which is needed to run companies, to run, all those type of issues, are actually doing their part. Otherwise, we're still going on a downward spiral. We are in Africa, we are South Africa, and we need to be the trendsetters. But it seems as if over these years, we hardly learn. Our gross domestic products have actually gone down. We need to learn from what has happened. We are hoping that out of what the minister has stated as issues, which they will be addressing to try and turn the tide around, that it will happen. But it seems as if it's going to be quite uphill.
Right, thank you very much. Sibongile Nkomo from the IFP, that's the IFP Chief Whip, giving us her party's views on the budget policy statement. Up next, let's talk to the UDM, Mr. Ngaba Kwankwa. The UDM's position on the budget statement?
Well, there was really nothing new in the medium-term budget policy statement, in the sense that it's full of the same statements of hope that were made in the past. But what is of particular concern to us as the party is the fact that government has gotten to a point where it draws down contingency reserves, in order to finance consumption expenditure in the form of wages in the public sector wage bill. And that wage bill continues to grow beyond the inflation, above the inflation rate, which confirms one thing once more, that they continue to use government as an employment agency. The other issue obviously has to do with these economic growth forecasts, where we're still growing far below 2% per annum. Like, for example, the forecast for next year is 1.7%. And if you're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, the currently growing continent is actually growing at about 4%. That can only tell you one thing, that there are problems with policy coordination, policy certainty, and the kind of policy mix that we choose as a country in order to grow this economy. The other issue, in conclusion, obviously has to do with the fact that we continued talking in Parliament, whereas there are students demonstrating outside. I came out and spoke to a group of students that was demonstrating here, and they told me that all they wanted was to be addressed by the Minister of Higher Education. And I relayed the message in Parliament, in the House, to the Minister, but nothing was done, which is very sad, because we are leading these people. These are our people, and this is the Parliament of the people. When they come here, whatever the circumstances under which they find themselves, we should be able to actually address them and talk to them and give them hope. That's what we are here for. That's what they elected us to do.
How do you think we can plug this, funding shortfall at higher education level?
Remember, there's a lot of wastage that takes place in various government departments. I think what we should be doing is to reallocate some of the resources so that we channel them towards higher education, because quite frankly, I'm sure there's no money, there's no extra cash available for us to do that. But if we reprioritize, we should be able to find resources within the system, even take budgets away from institutions such as Parliament and so on, and other arms of government.
Mr. Ngaba Kwankwa from the UDM giving us his party's view on the medium-term budget policy statement. We'll be back with civil society and other business leaders on the other side. But for now, back to you, Francis.
Coming to you live from Parliament this afternoon. And bear with us, it's been very difficult to decide where to place the cameras today. We've had protests outside Parliament. We've had students storming the gates into the parliamentary precinct just outside the door where Nhlanhla Nene was giving his speech. So that was happening. He continued with his speech after a lot of politics in Parliament about this very issue, about student fees for higher education. So because of the protest, some of you may have missed the actual speech, and we are going to bring that speech to you again. You're seeing political reaction, but it's good to know what was in that speech. Let's just quickly run through some of the highlights. I'm joined by my colleague Mogeni Mutwa, who was in the lockdown earlier, hearing the actual details of the actual budget. We do have a mini budget today that has been tabled. Firstly, did he mention higher education, the allocations, the things that have become so contentious in these last few days?
Well, I think it's important to remember that these protests about university fees only began at Wits University last week. By then, the medium-term budget policy statement would have been long drawn up by National Treasury. I mean, it's not like they draw up these documents today and then the minister presents it tomorrow. Same with the national budget. What the minister did say to us in lockup, there is normally a media briefing there, it's around 10:30 where he comes and speaks to us under embargo. What he did say on this issue was the issue of the higher education fees has been attended to by the Minister of Higher Education, Mr. Blade Nzimande. You remember yesterday he met with all the stakeholders and an agreement or some compromise was reached in terms of responding to the demands currently now, where it was decided that the government is going to put a cap on fee increases at 6% for next year. That while government and the stakeholders try and come up with a long-term solution to this issue of fee increases. So the 6% cap was a temporary measure. So that's what he said. Also, he said the DG, the Director General of National Treasury, is also engaging and interacting with rectors and so on from all universities as part of looking at finding a permanent solution, a long-term solution to university funding. So now that we have this protest, so I mean, that just happened today that students came here.
Tai is worried about Gita's reaction to the goings-on Thursday on Siebendelaan. A devastated Tandaza hears heartbreaking news on Mubango. And Stone gives the stage to Ishmael and Tiwe on Afro Cafe.